Morning to you, Ryan. If you had to pick a club who's done the best business so far, then who would you pick?
Well, there's a few clubs who have stood out to me so far. I'd definitely go Birmingham City as the obvious one, though. I think they've turned themselves from a side who would have probably finished around lower mid-table this season into a genuine dark horse for the top six. They've signed the likes of Christian Bielik, Dion Sanderson, and loads of other players, all under the age of 26, for less than £10 million. And I reckon if they spent maybe around double that, I'd still say they've had a cracking transfer window. So the fact they've managed to get all these players for a pittance really is incredibly remarkable. I think Plymouth also deserve a shout as well. They brought in the likes of Ballymumba and Morgan Whittaker for £1 million each. I think those two are two players who I wouldn't be surprised to see in the Premier League at some point, just because I rate them so incredibly highly. Well, then they've also signed really well in defence. Defence was a bit of a weak spot for them last season, but they brought in Julio Plugwazego from FC Twente, who's a really impressive signing. I'm really looking forward to seeing him next season. So I'd say those two, but Birmingham probably just edged them. Interesting.
OK, so the season starts tonight, so people have got to get their skates on if they want to get players in before the start of the season. So in your opinion, who needs to do a bit more right now?
I would say Rotherham out of all the clubs. I think Rotherham have a good manager in place in Matt Taylor, who's done a really good job in keeping them in the Championship last season. He was the first manager to keep them in the league since Neil Warnock a long time ago now. Having said that, the squad is looking very weak. They really need to get some business done if they are to stay in the Championship. They have started to get moving with the likes of Fred Onyedinma coming in, who I think is a decent signing, but still that squad's looking a bit thin in terms of quality and depth. So unless Rotherham do some serious business in the next few weeks, with the window only 28 days away from closing, then I'm a bit fearful there for them.
Who would be your standout signing of the summer so far from the Championship then? Is there a player that you're really looking forward to seeing?
Plenty. I think the one who stands out for me is Ellis Sims, who's obviously gone from Everton to Coventry. Coventry don't really spend money very often on players, so the fact that they've forked out £3.5 million, I think it is, rising with add-ons and what have you, depending on how well the transfer goes. That's a really standout one for me, considering they've just sold Victor Gyökeres for £20 million to Sporting Lisbon. Sims is going to be the one who's going to be tasked with trying to fill the gap that's been left by him. But having said that, I think he's got the pedigree to do it. I think he's probably the best striker Coventry could have realistically signed. But according to Sky Sports sources, they're also linked with signing Haji Wright from Turkey as an American striker, who I think would look like a really good signing as well, considering they're reportedly on about spending about £7.5 million on him. So Sims and Wright next season for Coventry is a really fierce strike partnership if that signing does come off.
Yeah, Haji Wright close to being confirmed, £7.7 million. Coventry are my pick this year. I think they've spent the Gyökeres money really well. What about the relegated sides? Southampton, Leicester, Leeds, do you expect them to keep hold of their, the remaining big talents, I suppose, that they have?
I think Leicester probably will. I think the fact they've sold Maddison and Barnes means that they've got enough money in the bank now that they're not in a position to be forced to sell the big players that they've still got there. Southampton's an interesting one. Obviously, Livramento seems to be looking like he's going out the door now. Ward-Prowse has been linked with a move away as well. I think there's a couple of others who they'll be fearful about holding on to before the window closes. So I'm still a bit sceptical about Southampton and what the squad's going to look like there. Leeds are an interesting one because obviously they've already lost a hell of a lot of players already, and there's still a few who could be heading out the door as well there. So I think Leeds are the one where we could still see more departures before the window closes. Southampton maybe as well. I think Leicester, on the other hand, will be completely fine.
A word on Luton as well, obviously promoted to the Premier League for the first time. Do you feel like they have enough in their squad to compete? What have you made of their signings? They've brought in players who have mainly done the business in the EFL, Tahith Chong, Ryan Giles, those types of players. Have you seen them? Do you think they've done enough so far in order to compete?
Look, when Luton got promoted, they undoubtedly had to sign well in this summer, and considering how good their recruitment has been in the past, I think they've done more than enough personally. I think Tahith Chong's a cracking signing from Birmingham. He is going to be really important to carrying the ball forwards in midfield. Ryan Giles, I think, is a really top signing. Wouldn't surprise me if he's in the conversation with the England squad at the end of the season, just because England are quite thin on the ground when it comes to left backs anyway. But just because I think he's a really, really top player. That left foot is an absolute one. Kabore is an interesting one. He had quite a good season with Marseille last season. So I think him on the other side to Giles would be a really exciting player to watch. And Marvellous Nakamba was, well, marvellous in the Championship last season with Luton. So I think Luton have signed well. I still think they need to bring in a few more players. I think Thomas Kaminski's come in this morning as well, so that's a good signing. But they do need to bring in a couple more, but I think Luton will stay up personally.
It's a thankless task doing predictions for the EFL, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So in the Championship, who do you think is going to finish where? Who do you think will do really well and who do you think might struggle?
So I've had Leicester to win the league. I think their squad's just simply too strong not to be up and around there come the end of the season. Enzo Maresca, the new manager, is the obvious risk, but I think he'll come good just because he's obviously a world-class coach, having worked with Pep Guardiola. I've gone for a bit of a wild card shout as the other team to get automatically promoted. I've gone with Ipswich Town. They would become the first team to get promoted from League One and then get promoted again in nearly 10 years. It's been a long time since it's happened, but I think this is the strongest team to come up from League One in a long time. They haven't done crazy business over the summer, but I think they've been very sensible. And the manager, Kieran McKenna, is just one of the best, in fact, for me, the best young British manager in the country right now. And then the other team would be Coventry, as we were saying earlier. They've signed extremely well. This summer, everyone thought they'd fall away after losing in the playoff final, but they've shown that they've got plenty of ambition and they don't want to make last season a one-off. So they've built upon what they built last season, and I think they're going to go again.
Ryan, thanks so much for that. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the season ahead. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.